everybody. We're about to get started. Welcome to the School of Radical Attention. Thank you for coming here tonight for the Game and Play Salon with Boshis Place. I'm Amanda, I'm the operations manager here at the space, and I'm going to give you a little bit more information about where you are today. So you're here in our sanctuary. This is where we do all of our programming. The School of Radical Attention is a Brooklyn-based nonprofit focused on attention activism, which is really the collective movement for us to reclaim our human attention back from coercive technologies and human fracking. So we do that here at SoRA through different public programs like this and art programs with exhibitions. You'll see a little bit more about that today after the event. We also have attention labs, which are collective practices of attention. Together, they're very experiential, embodied workshops that we do together. We also have seminars, which are basically a deep dive into different topics, traditions, or disciplines in attention for interdisciplinary approach. And we also do a lot of coalition work and movement building and partnerships in order to kind of spread the attention activism movement around. So we use the pillars of study, practice, and coalition to kind of move forward our work. So we're really excited to have you here today and to be exhibiting the amazing work of Boshis Place here in the space. And yeah, thank you all for coming through. And I'm going to pass it over to Moochie, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what you'll be seeing tonight.
I just need you to think of the sound here real quick. If there's any sound coming. We'll see. Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Moochie. I'm here, I'm emceeing for this event, which is a thing we put together as Boshis Place to present a bunch of things we do. Most of the things you're going to be seeing today are straightforward or not presentations about some topic in games and play by many people that we have interacted with along our 3 years of existence as Boshis Place. Boshis Place is a collective video game, play people. We run events almost monthly, but we run events a lot, mostly in our location in East Williamsburg. Our events are focused primarily in play and games. We do curations where we select a bunch of games over a certain theme, and then there's like this sort of party where you go around, you play the games. Sometimes games that only make sense to be played at that event. Sometimes games that, when played at the event, become something very special. We also do classes sometimes, and we also do workshops, movie nights, along with many other things that we do there. We're a group of 17 people right now, if I'm not mistaken. We've had a total of probably 20-something people coming by as members, and we run everything by consensus, which makes things really exciting to do and kind of slow, but really beautiful. We've been running for 3 years. We haven't celebrated our 3-year birthday yet, but we might soon, now that we might be staying at the current space that we are. Who knows about places in New York. And is there anything I'm missing? Like, if you think I'm missing something, just raise your hand. Okay, I'm not missing anything. That was great. I wouldn't ask you what I was missing. I just wanted to see if I was missing something. Okay, and so yeah, there's going to be a bunch of presenters. I will come up on the spot with an introduction for them because I did not prepare anything. But I think I can do it. And so I will start. And one of the events we do at Boshis is a monthly music jam for everyone. And I like it to be focused on non-musicians, but ends up that many musicians come. And so if you're not a musician, come to the jam because we need more of you. But we do kind of games where people play with their voices or with instruments and most of the times they're noisy and weird. Many times they're also very beautiful. And one of the games is, I think, something that people here at SoRA will be really interested if they don't already know it. Relates a lot to all these cards that you see in the back if you want to see these later. But it's a game by Paulino Oliveros, and if you've seen me talk on a microphone, you've done this before. But I'm going to do a modified version of it because it's also going to have to do with what I'm doing here. And I'm also going to set up the sound while we do it. So this is called tuning meditation. Maybe this whole thing is going to be called Mario meditation. And the way this goes is that first, before we start anything, you're going to close your eyes and you're going to roll a D100, a 100-sided dice in your head. I know you all can do this. And then you get that number and you look at it, and that's your number for tonight. That's a number for you. And then just keep that number.
Mario! Hello!
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so next up we have Waleed. Waleed is the best gamer.
Oh no.
I know. I think I have credentials. Probably the highest ranked person in the room.
Oh no.
Maybe. I think Waleed is the highest ranked on average in multiple games person in the room. And he's also a great friend of mine, which is cool with me. And he's going to be talking about esports, which is a thing he apparently knows very dearly. So give it up for Waleed and why esports fail.
That's right.
One second. Okay, hello, hi. My name is Waleed. I'm here to tell you why esports fail. To do that though, I need to first go over the credentials that Muchi was talking about. So that's me. You can call me Banana Boy, only in game though. I was a esports athlete in 2016 where I played, my fun fact is I played Division 1 esports at Penn State. Was an Overwatch top 500 player for a year or two. Before that I played CS at a high level, and now my big grind is League of Legends. I'm an esports fanatic. I love esports. I love watching sports. I follow a number of teams. I was supposed to wear this jersey today. I do not fit in it anymore. With all that being said, I still do believe esports fundamentally fail. Before I get into my reasons, I'd like to define our terms a little. Trying to define sport is kind of like trying to define art, and so I'll give you my one sentence of it, and then we'll be done. Sport is a game played by athletes, and an esport is a sport played online. So the example I'd like to give is that chess, traditional chess over the board, is a sport, and that works. And the esport version of that is online chess, and it fails. The other thing that sports do really, really well is it brings people together across cultures and across different skill sets and beliefs. And a failure of a sport is when it doesn't do that. It's the opposite of that. And so that is my claim to you today. And this presentation, I'm going to go over three different claims, three of my favorite claims as to why I believe esports fail. There's going to be a bit of question and answer segment here in a second, so I'm going to ask for some audience participation. Because the first reason I'm going to talk about is ball. So, balls are a favorite toy of many of us. Everyone's held a ball. Everyone knows how to throw a ball and catch a ball. And it's also kind of a universal skill that we admire when someone is really good with ball. And so that makes for an excellent toy, an unambiguous toy that transcends language. It also makes for a really easy thing to spectate. Because when you're watching any sort of ball sport, all you need to ask yourself is, where's the ball? And to reinforce that, we're going to go over a couple of clips. I believe does the audio work in this? It's okay if it doesn't, but we'll find out actually. And I'm going to ask you one simple question after I watch this clip, and that is just simply, where is the ball? Ready? Cool. Clip number one. Oh, audio doesn't work. It's fine. Oh, can you see that? Okay. I guess. Okay, guys, where's the ball? We're in the basket. Excellent. You guys are really good at this. Not only will this image live in the rest of our Knicks fans for the kind of eternity, it is also the clip is beautiful because it's only a couple of seconds, and we're able to trace the clip from start to finish, from play by play, from the OG pass to Jalen to the shot for the three to the OG tip in. All of it we get to see because all we're doing is staring at this orange ball. It's also beautiful to note that even in the absence of a ball, we know something interesting is happening. In baseball, when a home run is hit, oftentimes the camera can't catch up with where the ball is. And so when you don't know where the ball is in a game of baseball, it often means something very exciting is happening. Ready for clip number 2? It's going to get a little harder this time.
Yes.
Okay, ready? Okay. Where's the ball? The hands. Nice. Very good. The glove. Cool. Good. Do you have another answer?
I mean, it doesn't need to be a ball because the point of the ball is that it provides a single point of focus. Since it's only 2 people, a small area, you don't need a single point of focus. You can already keep everything to your attention.
You can come do this presentation right here. You're absolutely right. You're correct. I don't think there needs to be a ball for there to be a ball. In fact, the gloves is a good answer. I would also circle the head as 2 balls that are moving side by side. And when the ball falls to the mat, you already know something's happening. So you don't need to be a boxing expert to know and to be engaged in this sport. And so in this case, I'd say that ball is not necessarily always ball, but that ball is life. And by life, I mean that simply following the ball tells you everything you need to know about what's happening in the sport. Whether who's holding it, where it's getting thrown, what basket it falls into. It kind of system completes simply by answering this question in whatever sport that you are watching. Okay, this is the hardest clip. Are we ready for round 3? All right. Where's the ball? Okay. Maybe balls. Okay, that's an answer.
My instinctual response is the ball is wherever like the light is brightest on the screen.
That's a good one. I like that answer too.
The ball is the kills at the top.
At the top little announcement page, yeah, absolutely. The little announcers, yes.
No, isn't the point again when you have to like get something in the opponent's face?
Oh, that's a good one. Yes. You're.
That we're focusing on the wrong thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, there's all those are correct answers. Because. Okay, next clip. Oh, there you go. Cool. So there's a couple of us maybe thought it was the health bars of the characters. Maybe you thought it was the health bar of this big monster in the middle that eventually dies. One of us correctly pointed out that when things die, that the score tally goes up and changes. And so you might believe that there are a dozen different balls that are happening simultaneously, but my answer to this question is that esports have no balls. And that's because the system, it isn't necessarily even more complex than it is to a regular sport, but you don't know the intricacies of what moves what in what direction, unless you've played the game intimately and you know what's going on. That isn't even to account for the physicality of esports that exists, the relationship between the characters or the players and the computer screen and the keyboards and all those clicks, or the relationship of being in a LAN party. None of that is even factored into the esport because there's already so much going on that you can't follow all of it. So that's my first argument. My second big reason is fouls. I define a foul as a player breaking the rule of a game or of the spirit of the sport. In traditional sports, fouls are given and arbitrated by a referee, and they're happening live in a specific moment. In my opinion, the referee is maybe the most valuable thing that sports offer us. And an example I like to give here is some of our most fond memories of sports and events and moments in sports come from fouls, or maybe the lack thereof, a called foul. I think of the famous hand of God moment for Maradona, successfully handballs a ball outside of the goalie's hand and kind of scores a goal. And this is a kind of an iconic moment in soccer, but also in the world generally, a moment that consistently is discussed as whether it should be considered a Hall of Fame moment of soccer, because it is indeed a foul, one that never gets called. And it's in that discussion that we have among people that elevates it from just a moment in a game and transcends into something else. Fouls exist in esports. I think of the Navi Fountain Hook, your CS Olaf boosts, your Bates, Luigi, weird melee tech, your XPK backdoors. These all things exist and fouls exist in sports, or in esports. But there is one major difference, and for me that's accountability. To give an example, when a foul occurs in the NBA or the NFL, you don't break the rules of basketball, you break the rules of the NBA. You didn't follow the regulation of the tournament because NBA hosts basketball tournaments, it does not own basketball. When I go play pickup basketball in Brooklyn, I am not playing like the NBA, certainly. Compare that to when we're playing a game of Counter-Strike, a game owned and operated by servers in Valve. When I break something in Counter-Strike, the arbitrator of that game is the computer, and it's the server that Valve runs it on. And if you're not doing the right thing on that server, it gets patched very quickly. And because that accountability exists, I no longer have ownership of the sport or of the game that I am playing. In fact, I never did, and I never will. That leads me to my final reason, and that's heart. Does anyone know who that person on the left is? Cool. It's the DRC superfan. I'm going to butcher this name, but Mikhail Kukuboltina is a DRC World Cup superfan who has been invited by the team to stand in the stands to support the team for the World Cup. And he stands still for 90 minutes in tribute to the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And he does this, I believe, not because of the true belief and love maybe of the sport of football, but rather because football transcends the game and into the world stage. That we believe that there is this power that this tournament hosts, that this game has over us, that we can set ourselves on center stage and promote ourselves to the world, to declare ourselves here, that we exist and that we are important and that we are valuable. It reminds me of the quote from Game of Thrones. I know you're a bunch of nerds, so I can say this, but Varys says, "Power resides where men believe it resides," and we believe it resides in football. We don't even need to look to the World Cup because only a couple of days ago, well, that's his name. Only a couple of days ago, we saw our very own New York Knicks take to the streets and the parades, and we watched as basketball fans of 53 years and basketball fans of a couple of days come together in New York City to celebrate this team. Because it's not about the basketball that the team is playing, it's about what it does to our environment. Because we believe in the strength and the power that the sport relates and reflects in us as people, because it's the people's game. Esports can never be this, because esports are not owned by us. They are owned by the corporations that make them. And so long as the corporations own esports, they will always fail. Thank you.
Thanks, Waleed. Nice. Next up is Ava, and I'm going to say who's the next, so you can be ready. So next is Joey. But next up is Ava, who I met when a little bit before we started boshis, I think. And Ava actually inspired me a lot of things beyond games, like puppets. Like Ava was the first puppeteer I met, and now I met so many other puppeteers. Because now I live where Ava lives, and there's so many puppeteers there. Ava also hosted this game that they're going to be talking about. So give it up for Ava.
Thanks, Muji. Okay, hi everyone, I'm Ava. I made this game. Well, here's my presentation about the game. It's called Game Design for Touching Pavement and an NYC GeoGuessr Retrospective. Okay, let's go. So I made a game called NYC GeoGuessr. There's so many asterisks on this to say that I first made it with my friend Jay, who's there. There were 2 versions, then we made a new one. And then also GeoGuessr is copyrighted, so this is more of an elevator pitch name to explain the concept, like Kleenex but for bees, GeoGuessr but for New York City. What is GeoGuessr? So GeoGuessr, according to Wikipedia, is a geography game in which players try to deduce locations from Google Street View imagery. So you get plopped in a random spot in the world using the Google Street View panorama, and you have to click on a map where you think it is in the world, and it scores you based on how close you are. And people play this online all the time. It's a great game. What is New York City? It is the place you're in right now. And then, what is New York City geoguessr? Let's just play it. I hope you all brought your phones to the School for Radical Attention. I hope you're ready and they're in your hand already. Let's play. Surprise, you're in teams now. Whoever's sitting next to you, maybe if you have a row of 3 or whatever, you're in a team now. Group up with them. One of you, at least one of you, has to scan this QR code. And then also think about what your team name is, like really quickly. Go, 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 go. What's happening? What's happening? I have to change my settings. Change. Okay. Just one of you type in your name.
One phone per team?
Yeah, you can look at just at least one of you. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds to come up with an amazing name. Five. Just one person per team needs to put it in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are we ready to hear the instructions for the game?
Yeah.
The game is, I will display a location that is within New York City. It is within the 5 boroughs, and you must click on the map, type in your team name, click on the map where you think it is. You will have 3 minutes to do it. Discuss amongst yourselves, and feet really do matter. It's exponentially scaled. So try to get as close as you think it is. And then hit submit, that's an important step, and then we'll see how everyone did. Are you ready?
Yes.
Set. Go. Did it work? Oh, sorry.
The bottom part.
Just hit submit. It should be correct. If there's a bug, I can't do anything about it.
The map doesn't give us a right? No, sorry, it's correct.
That's on purpose.
Okay, yeah. Just make sure it's on its screen. You get some pictures of yours.
We have 1 minute left. Does that feel too long? 1 minute left. If you submitted, you should appear up there, so make sure you submit in time.
I don't know. Wait, I think it's just
30 seconds. Make sure to hit submit. Oh, we have 9 teams. 10 teams. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, no, just hit submit. It's secret. It doesn't do it automatically because I'm nice. Okay, any stragglers? Any stragglers? Okay, now I'm gonna actually end it. Now you can't. Can you hit submit? Is it possible? Okay. I only have so much time. We're ending the round. I'm so sorry. I made a bug. Let's see how we did. Let's see how we did. Let's see who did first. Team row 4 on the right. Admirable. Visa Drew, also admirable. But not the wrong bridge, but you did see a bridge. We've got George. We've got 3 attentive guessers. LBL, Buckeyes. We've got a cluster here. We've got another cluster here. Sourcewell's good choice. Is that allowed? Keith, military clearance. And then I think we do have a winner. Here's second place, Pigeon. And front row the score is 948 out of 1,000. Nerds in the front of the class. Okay, now I have to go back to presentation. Stop extending. Choose content. Okay, we're doing that. Okay, thank you, folks. Not this. Thank you for playing. Okay, we're giving a talk now. So, how did this game start? First, I saw my friend Quinn's Instagram story, and it said, if you can geolocate what neighborhood I'm in based on this, you get a free flag tattoo. Do you think you can get this? Just shout out. What neighborhood do you think this is in? Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Close? Yes! Oh my god! Wow! Okay. Rego. Wait, did you know this already? Oh my gosh. This is Rego Park, Queens. Good job. I said that I got it right, but I actually didn't. I guessed Corona, but that was close enough to inspire me and make me think I would be really good at this game. And 16 likes on me saying, if I did this, would you play? Was enough to get me to make this game. Quinn, who did this Instagram story, is an amazing artist, and he's like one of the most favorite, the best noticers that I know. Like, he uses it in his art. He takes crazy pictures just on his phone all the time, and he's just an awesome, he's all out in the streets noticing things. I'm very inspired by Quinn. And so I had a beautiful dream that entered my head when I saw this. I thought, can we make a game that's really fun and obviously brings people together in person, but it rewards touching grass, being a great noticer, local and lived knowledge, the modern day useless skill of wayfinding in the age of Google Maps, engagement with your community and environment, getting together and partying. Can we do this? Let's see. Let's talk about regular GeoGuessr. You would think that classic GeoGuessr would reward being good at geography or maybe traveling the world, but actually at high levels it looks more like this guy who knows the exact Peruvian rock wall. I won't play this. He knows this rock that's on an island. He can recognize the exact color of Brazilian dirt just because he hasn't been to Brazil, but he's played the game a lot, which I think is beautiful. There's a certain type of attention that has its own skill, which I would think is just super devoted attention to the screen, the specifics of the game. It's awesome. No shade on this. Then someone told me recently about Goodhart's law, which is this quote: when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Sure, I think it's cool in games, but maybe not for standardized tests, I guess, is what people talk about here. Another example is Scrabble. You think oh, I'm a wordsmith. I'm a man of letters. I'll be so good at Scrabble. I have such a great vocabulary. But actually then if you show up to any one of these actual competitive Scrabble clubs like I did once, you get handed this immediately as a beginner because everyone else has already memorized the 2-letter words that score the optimal amount of points. This is just table stakes to play competitive Scrabble. So it's actually not a vocabulary game, it's like a numbers game, which is cool, but then it's no longer speaking to this oh, but I'm good at English. Psych. do not. So I made some design decisions to avoid this. We limited the scale so that you can't ever get that good at this game. It's just local, in person, in small rooms, embracing the casual party game vibe. I also host it, and you can't play it without me. Haha. So I'm limiting it. Also, other design decisions that I made for fun. Instead of having randomly generated mass replayable data, like you just play infinite games, I hand select places that I think are engaging, and they have my taste or whatever, but I think, oh, this is hard, this is easy, this is this audience. We'll do dramatic reveals after each location, and you can see when people submitted, and you can, kind of like make fun of them if they're late, or brag about being early. Just made things snappier and made things on mobile to make it accessible. And I also, when I played the actual game, added some New York trivia questions for intermissions. So I thought, did I succeed at my dream? I thought I could measure the success of my design by who wins the game. So teams that do better are diverse. So if you live all in the same place, or you work at the same place, or you're only in the same borough, you don't do as well as a team that actually has people from many different places. And you're also encouraged to team up with people you just met. So if you only stay in your little in-group, maybe you don't do as well in this game. Also, winners have lived here and done all the things in life here. Examples of things that people have shouted when they got around right have been, my ex used to live here, or when I had cancer, I had to go to this medical imaging center a lot, and it was really scary, or I walk my dog here every morning, or I'm a member of that food co-op, and it's very dramatic. And so these moments in memory are often the in-between, mundane, and overlooked ones. And also, winners sometimes have broader geographical or cultural knowledge and patterns that they've noticed from living here, like those Tudor-style apartments really give it away. Or is that sign in Bengali? Or that has to be New Jersey across the water. But they haven't played this game enough to just focus on gaming the game. It's this knowledge that is important. So people who are just big gamers, even though I am one, they don't necessarily win, or someone just working on their own doesn't win, and someone who just may not pay as much attention or score very much, maybe doesn't do as well in this game. So some of the glorious actual specific winners of the whole game that we've had have been transit enthusiasts, people who said, I visited every subway station, which is crazy because I think there's almost 500 subway stations in this system. People have said, I bike a lot and take the bus. And then most recently, someone said, I was a bike courier for a mutual aid network for many years. And you all never had a chance. That's what he said. So, okay, don't read this because I don't actually have notes. So these are my notes. So perhaps this is my power trip. I care very much about imagining a different world, especially one that assigns value differently and therefore operates differently. In the absence of some magical giant power to economically change this, I do have the power of game design. So I can at least make a game that's delightful and follows these other rules. Different emotions or motivations or connections emerge, if only for 1 hour at a time, every once in a while when I have time to run this. So I wish that we had a society that would value people who touch grass, that we reward ourselves for living a full life with our eyes open, for being engaged with our community and forming connections, for going somewhere weird or random for no reason, for widening your circle of friends and people you interact with. So I can't change society, but I can bend the rules a bit to make a game where this is true. And so, yeah, there's a world out there for video games. Go outside, talk to people, do all this stuff, and it can be fun, and we can do it together in a room and have a party. And also, you can do better at the game because you're this kind of person, in theory. And so, you saw the design. It's fairly unmonetized, it's local, it's accessible. I don't even have CSS on it, so it's very bare bones, unadorned, but it's a very humble piece of software that I think brings a lot of joy. So, yeah, it's fun. Yay! Here's the people. Notice the street corner you're doing. Okay, thanks.
Hello. Next up is Joey. I can take my computer out of here. Joey, who I was a fan before I met, which is true for some people in this presentation, but first up as a person who I didn't know, I knew from the internet, he made a game with Luigi in it, and I hadn't made any games with any Mario characters when I played that before. So I think Joey as one of my big inspirations for putting Luigi in my games. Also taught the first class at boshis last year, which was really amazing. And I see some people here who took that class. So to do it for Joey with dead time and a lifetime. I think you're. It's not sure. Oh, you gotta do it. Okay.
Wait, what is this? Okay.
Hi. Hello. I'm Joey, that's what you said. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about dead time and alive time when I'm playing. I'm just like, kind of like a funny thing about how time works in video games. So I guess before I kind of dive into it, I'll start with like a story. So my dad plays like 3 video games a year basically, and will like occasionally ask me for recommendations. So he's a big Batman fan. So years back, I was like, oh, you should play like the Batman games, like Batman whatever. And he, like most people who don't play a lot of games, struggles to like move the camera. So anyway, so there's this like early moment in the game where, basically he's walking around, and okay, here we go. So basically, Joker's like filled this like room with like Joker gas. And there's like this poor like traumatized security guy who's like begging you to go help him. But because my dad like can't use the camera correctly, he's stuck here for like 3 minutes while the guy's just like having a meltdown. And so it looks like this. And so this is what I think of as what I want to call dead time in games, right? And you can feel it really strongly here because it's kind of like presenting as if it's real time, but it's obviously not, right? Time is not actually moving. Progress happens only based on action. So we'll just wait here for 3 years if that's how long it takes you, right? Even though it's kind of has the pretensions as if that won't happen. So this is what I mean by dead time. It's almost like being like in a museum, and the only things that happen is when you walk up and pull the lever, right? So otherwise there's no real time. And this is different from what I want to call alive time. So just something like Animal Crossing, right? Where you're like this cute little dude in a town, and unlike Batman, in this one, time really does always go. So you can pause, but it actually doesn't pause the time. The town will kind of keep moving. And actually, as it turns out, even when you close the game and you come back, time will also have kept going. Leaves will grow, neighbors might have moved out, new people have moved in, things keep happening. And because time kind of asserts its kind of beyond your control, the game feels sort of more alive, like it has autonomy, which makes it feel like this like full kind of living creature beyond your kind of control. Which I think is sort of cool and interesting, right? So live time is inalterable, progress is based on internal time. It's not based on action, it's based on time. And you just have to wait until the next thing to happen. So that's dead time and live time. So basically, I want to kind of like just think about time in different ways. And to start, I actually want to go like all the way back to the earliest games, which were really about fate. It's kind of like this weird thing. So like the earliest game that we kind of know of was Lots, played with knuckle bones, so you like throw the dice. And it was believed that Lots began not as a game, but as like a tool for divination and soothsaying. And then eventually it becomes kind of a game of chance. So you're throwing these things and whatever. But early on, before it's kind of this game of uncertainty or whatever, you might think of it as this space where you can kind of witness destiny itself, right? And it can kind of move through you in a way that's sort of interesting. And even like games that are highly skill-based, like the Olympics, also were viewed this way. That like, even though it's kind of a game of skill, it's also like kind of something that's like endorsed by the gods, right? That like fate was always, this was always going to happen. And yeah. And so if these tools are, we might think of them as like, again, a space that kind of opens up a space in which destiny and fate can be encountered and can move through you. What I think is interesting is it's this thing that's kind of beyond yourself, right? It's external to you and the player, and something kind of descends down into the play space, and you're kind of there to witness it. And this is sort of in harmony with a lot of how kind of people related to art in antiquity. There's this great book by art historian Hans Belting called Likeness and Presence. And he's looking at kind of the origins of kind of the ancient icon. And as it turns out, the early icons were really not about kind of visual beauty. They were actually kind of this, they had this like utility to them. They were a thing where you could view the presence of something that could not otherwise be there. So this is a quick quote from Hans. Common to the most diverse of attitudes is a recognition of the cult image, like the sacred image, not as an aesthetic illusion, or even as the work of an artist, but as a manifestation of a higher reality. Indeed, as an instrument of a supernatural power. So what he means by that is that basically, if you're standing in front of like an icon of the Madonna, as it turns out, the Madonna has chosen this icon to represent her. And so anytime you depict this icon, she will appear there. And then you can be in the presence of the Madonna. And so this is a way to conjure the presence of the sacred or the dead also is another way. So someone that you've lost, if you depict them through the icon, the dead choose their icon and will return to it. And so again, these icons are things that are there for the presence of something that is otherwise inaccessible. And this obviously is not how we relate to images in games nowadays, right? So this very much kind of changed, both with Reformation of Martin Luther and also the Age of Enlightenment, very much kind of remolded how we kind of relate to these things. Our kind of relations to the world is no longer so heavily mediated, at least by default, through kind of God and the divine and all that stuff. It's much more kind of the rise of humanism and all that stuff. And this is also what Hans Belting calls the crisis of the image, where people are relating these images in ways that now kind of seem impossible. And so that's when they turn to kind of visual aesthetics or whatever. This happens for games as well, right? So with the rise of humanism, which is kind of best depicted through Martin Luther, and the humanist Erasmus had like this long series of essays that they had against each other. And suddenly this idea of fate and destiny is changed, right, with the rise of humanism. That it's no longer kind of predestination like Martin Luther would think, it's more like just humans have free will, right? And so our games also changed. So this is the royal game of Goose, which was all the rage in Renaissance Europe. And like lots, it's also you're throwing dice, but it's not a game about fate. It's a game that's much more about chance and fun and much closer to how we kind of think of games. So basically, the important thing here is that that idea of the presence and destiny and all that stuff kind of falls away all of a sudden with the rise of the Renaissance. And so to fast forward into the Industrial Revolution, suddenly our relations to labor is also being kind of dramatically reshaped, right? So the craftsman's being replaced by the factory worker, all of our labor is being heavily mediated through machine labor, right? As a result, our relations to machines are kind of this really kind of intimate, weird thing. And in the workplace, we're kind of constantly surrounded and kind of dominated by these things. And after that, we clock out, we go into our leisure time. And actually, we then spend more time around these machines, but as play. So this is the rise of penny arcades. And we're starting to play with these machines as well, and have this weird new kind of relationship with them. So we have this weird human relationship, which kind of obviously still exists now. And a lot of these early kind of games were these automata machines. So you'd go up to them and you put in 10 cents or whatever, and they'd sing you a little song or whatever, right? And the pleasure here is this presence of something that is digital, right? That suddenly, the beauty of the thing is that it can kind of come alive in front of you in ways you can't fully understand, and it's to witness the presence of this thing that is outside of you, right? And so these were really popular. There's a bunch of different ones. Here's another little singing guy. This is the Kaiser panorama, which Walter Benjamin wrote about, where it's kind of like a slideshow kind of thing. It's in front of it. I think an early Nickelodeon sort of a thing. And then there are also, these are obviously highly orientalist, but these were really popular as well, these fortune-telling machines where you kind of come and they do something. And again, the pleasure of this stuff is that they're kind of coming alive before you. Like Animal Crossing, these are very much real-time games, right? If you could pause this, it would very much destroy that illusion, right? It's very much reliant on the fact that once it kind of sets itself in motion, it can't be stopped, and it's just going to keep going and keep going. So this is kind of like the rise of the real-time game, I would say, the live-time game. And this continues obviously all the way through the arcades, 70s and 80s, where obviously these games are also real-time, right? Where this is Tempest, one of my favorite arcade games. And these are real-time, live time by design, because you want to shuffle as many players as you can, right? So you're trying to speed things up. You don't want people pausing, because then you're not going to get as many quarters out of them. And this holds true until we get to consoles, where all of this starts to change. And very quickly, we get the introduction of the pause button, basically. So this is with the channel F. And early on, basically, it's the console that just freeze frames the game. So the game is running, and then something outside of the game will come in and kind of intervene and like hold it steady for as long as you want. But it's not the game itself that's stopping. And that carries until the early 80s, when we start to get dedicated pause screens. So suddenly, now it's not something external to the game, but the games themselves are saying, I want to be paused, I'm expecting to be paused, and something internal with the game is going to take you to this new state, right? And then from there, we start to get mechanics in pause screens. So this is Zelda, where you have to manage your items in the pause screen. And then the first Dragon Warrior game, or Dragon Quest game, also localized as Dragon Warrior. The only way to interact with things is to pause. So basically, it's clear that kind of the pause screen is not only tolerated now, but there's something that's kind of being rewired in how these games are operating, where as they're moving into homes, they kind of expect and want to be paused. And so that aliveness is starting to kind of be compromised in ways that basically they're starting to become domesticated, and for good reason, right? Like you want to be able to pause to like let someone in or check your crying baby or whatever. But basically these games are starting to wait for you. So as they begin in the arcades, time is kind of inalterable, they're alive, and then once you move from the public sphere to the private sphere, they're beginning to be made for this new realm, and there's kind of some serious consequences from that. So I think there's kind of a bifurcation that happens. This is a mutoscope at the top, just like a current hand crank like slideshow. And so we've got the kind of alive time games and the kind of domestic, private dead time games. And I think, like I said at the top, there's something kind of lost in that. Very quickly, actually, the alive time game kind of starts to come back in new ways. So the first big one I would say is the Tamagotchi in the 90s, which is like this like little guy that you have, a little thing, and all it is you just have to care for this little creature, right? So you have to feed him every day, you have to like wash him, I think. I haven't played Tamagotchi. But like, if you don't, then the next day he'll be hungry. And I don't know, can Tamagotchi die?
Yes.
Oh.
It's trauma.
Yeah, okay. Many sad parents in the room. So basically, this game is all time. That's like the only thing the game is. It's about that autonomy of the creature preserved through time itself. That you can't pause the thing. You have to kind of take care of it. And so that's Tamagotchi. And then from there we get Animal Crossing, which we looked at earlier, where it kind of zooms out from just the one little dude to now you've got like a whole village where you can come, and the pleasure of the thing is to kind of go into this town that existed before you and will exist after you, right? This, in the later Animal Crossings, they start to kind of compromise that a bit, but like in the first one, it's very much like you are a person, one of many villagers kind of feeling. And so this town feels kind of alive. We have lots of various alive time games. I would say RTSs, real-time strategy games, are also that, where basically you're playing this game, and then outside in like the black fog of war, the enemies are also kind of always operating. And you don't quite know what they're doing, but sometimes like they'll pass through or whatever. You can kind of feel them kind of actively working away. And what's interesting about these games is that I would say most games are really about space, right? There's like a lot of these like digital tourism kind of games. There's kind of like puzzle games or whatever. And like I said, it's the museum. You go up to the levee, you pull it, and whatever. And to me, these are very much games that are about time in kind of a very direct way, right? It's about kind of acclimating to this new rhythm that the game itself dictates, right? And accepting something beyond your control. And through that, they feel real in ways that they wouldn't otherwise. Yeah. And I think in an age where everything is so kind of go, 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 there's something sort of radical about swimming against that current. In a kind of surprising way, I feel like these games, because you're unable to slow them down, they kind of give you permission to like just remove yourself from that flow of kind of constantly churning forward in a way that I find sort of exciting. I feel like there's many kind of works that have sat with this, The Rise of Slow Cinema. This is Andy Warhol's Empire, where it's just like 7 hours of the Empire State Building. A lot of this is just about like sitting in kind of this boredom and this kind of this time itself kind of moving outside of you. This is another game, Desert Bus, where you have to drive from LA to Las Vegas, and it takes like 7 hours or something, and it pulls slightly to the right, you can see on the bottom. So if you like walk away, you'll go off the road, and then a tow truck will tow you all the way back to LA. And so if you're like 6 hours out, it'll take 6 hours to go back. And very much a game about time and just sitting with the time, right? And there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to kind of meet the game where it's at. So again, time kind of heavily commodified, and I feel like these alive time games, in their kind of autonomousness, they move at their own rhythms. You can't speed them up, and yeah, there's something just kind of beautiful, I think, about that. So yeah, that's it.
Hi. Hey, okay. Hello everyone, we're back. Next up we're going to have Bo, who I also went to school with. And Bo is a person that is the first ever person I met who knew how to fight. But also like not a person that is a fighter in the way that you'd imagine. Very gentle soul, one of the gentlest souls in my life. So, where do we go from here? And Bo is one of the people that, with some other friends, we were really into folk games in school. Even though we were at COVID times when we couldn't really play folk games together. So I guess this might be a good, I'm hoping to see this. I'm excited. Give it up for Bo.
Thanks, Mooch. So my name is Bo McGee, and my talk is on digital folk games. And so let's play a game. This one's not digital. We're gonna play a variation. I'm gonna live mod a game. The game is Zen counting, if you're a theater kid or understand it, mixed with a game that Mucci and I have played before, which is Invisible the Mind, if you know what the mind is. But also, I'm modding it so that we cannot lose, because losing is sad and we don't want to do that. So, as a group, we're going to try and do a thought exercise to mind meld with each other, right? So we're all going to get on the same page, we're going to lock back in after our snacks, and we're going to do this successfully. The way that we're going to do this is that in front of you, when you close your eyes, is going to be a deck of cards, and the cards are going to be numbered from 1 to a really big number. Whatever that really big number is in your head, you're going to shuffle them all up together in your mind, and then you're going to pick a card, and you're going to look at that card, and you're going to remember that number. Your eyes can stay closed, they can open if you're not, but you have a number on your card. So as a team, all of us, we are going to try to put our cards in numerical order ascending. So when your card is the next highest number of the group, you will say your number out loud, and we will continue to do this. The mod, so that we cannot lose, is that if someone says your number, you must have had your card wrong when you looked at it. So you can look and see another number. If someone skips your number, oh, you must have not had the right number. So you can look and see what number is actually on your card. So the goal is we're going to count from ascending order from 0 to a very big number, and then we will do it together. To start this game, I want us all to try to breathe simultaneously to lock in. Yeah, so we're going to breathe in. We're going to breathe out. One more time, we're going to breathe in. And when we breathe out, I'm going to stop talking and it's your floor to count.
7,
8,
9, 12, 18,
5:30.
26, 32,
48,
5,722.
5,723.
1 billion. 1,000,001.
1,007,832.
2 billion. 2,006,065.
2,300,000.
2,500,000.
2,643,000.
3,100,000, 111,101.1.
4 million.
4,342.
1 trillion.
2 trillion.
2,010,000,000,000. 2,069,000,000,000.
99 trillion, a million, and 1. 100 trillion.
Cool, I'm going to invite you, if you have not spoken and you want to say a number, to all together say our big number that we have drawn. Aside from that, we're going to end this game. Ready? So if you have not spoken and you want to say a number, say your big number right now.
800 trillion.
And there you go. So that's an example of a folk game. The base idea that is like a mind meld. It's this idea of trying to think on the same page of other people, trying to become a community, play a game together. But so what is a folk game? These are like my loose understanding of what folk games are. I am not the law of anything ever. So a folk game normally has an oral rule set, which means that it's not written down rules, it's passed through other people and through other plays. There's a lot of social interaction. Even in the game we just played, there's a social interaction that you have when you're not even moving, not interacting. A lot of folk games require movement, but they're not absolutely impertinent. There's constraints to folk games, which most constraints are the materials you have, the number of people you have, and what you can do with your own body. There's an emergent narrative in folk games. That game we just played had this narrative. We all laughed at moments. We all had the suspense, but I didn't tell you any of those things. I didn't conspire with any of you beforehand to do anything. It just kind of happens. there's no set author to a lot of folk games. It's not someone, the best example I always give is it's not Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, it's not Tag with Bennett Foddy, it's Tag, right? There are people that have created these, there are people that have passed them to you, there are people you learn them from, but a lot of these games come from culture, they come from like a rule set that's been passed down, no one has ownership of these games, and they're short. A lot of folk games are not 30 minutes to an hour, they're like 5 to 10 minute long games and experiences. These are some folk games you might know from your childhood. You've got like Hopscotch, you've got Foursquare, you've got Hide and Seek, you've got Tag. Those are like the 4 pillars of games that you've probably played growing up as a child. So then why folk games work, in my opinion? They're really easy, so they have a low entry of bar. Anyone can play a folk game and feel like they're doing well. It's not necessarily League of Legends, right? We don't have to know a lot to do these things. We can play them and we can just enjoy our time. It's not necessarily about winning as much as it is about the experience of playing. They're social. So the games inherently are about experiencing things with other people. It's about the community that you're building. It's not about like being the best thing. I'm not the best tag person in the world, although there is competitive tag. But the like folk idea of it is the social aspect. And there's constraints. So there's easy rules to follow that make your decisions feel impactful, but are easy. It's not a lot of cognitive thinking when you're playing these things. It's more reactionary and like being in the moment and not lost in other things. Great, so where do we go from here? That's the question I've asked myself. Like Muji said, I host a lot of like folk games and new games things with boshis Place and some of my other colleagues. I love folk games, I love like bringing them to the people and like doing things. But then friend swap games appeared. I had a like small epiphany when I started playing friend swap games. If you don't know, this is what a friend swap game technically defined as. Friend swap is also like not a real term, but friend swap games are the indie games that have been coming out all the time. They're social interaction co-op indie games. They have heavy constraints. There's emergent narratives. They value the mechanics over the visuals. A lot of the visuals are like heavy bubbles. A lot of them are like not super great. And there's quick play loops to the friend swap games. These are the like big ones. There are other ones like Mecha Chameleon that just came out and popped off. You've got Peak, you've got Super Battle Golf, you've got Repo, you've got Burgling Gnomes. There are like hundreds of these that are all like doing super well right now. And so I was like, why is that the new like streamer game that people are latching onto, and what's so successful about these things? And I found, this is a very similar slide you've seen before, that they have a very low entry, right? It's very easy to play these games. It's more about the social connection than the actual being good at the game, and there's heavy constraints to all of these games. This is literally the exact same slide, so I'm going to skip it. This is a quote I found on Friend Swap Games saying that they're the future of gaming whether you like it or not. And my hot take is that Friend Swap games are not necessarily the future of gaming, it's just the combination of the past of gaming with the current sphere of what we can do in gaming. So I think friend swap games are just folk games in the digital sphere in co-op form, right? So you've got this co-op digital game, that's a picture of It Takes Two, which is not a friend swap game. It's a co-op game where it's all about interaction, all about working with each other, all about solving these puzzles. You have this folk design of like understanding things, like climbing and like going out and hanging out with your friends and doing things. You put those two together and you make Peak, which is a game about climbing with your friends. And the narrative of Peak is not necessarily how fast do I get to the top of this mountain. It's the fun, interesting things that happen along the way that you get to the mountain. It's Miley Cyrus's The Climb. But that's the idea of what friend swap games are. So I'm a developer, so I'm going to speak in the developer term. What are my takeaways as the developer of making friend swaps? I haven't made a friend swap. Playing friend swaps, and like how I could interact this in my game sphere. These are my core mechanics that I think are super important. Multiplayer. So I think like multiplayer, the resurgence of like indie multiplayer is really big. If you look at like AAA right now, they're pumping out single player game after single player game that are like popping off and getting a lot of hype. But all of the like really big indie games seem to be this co-op vibe of like trying to interact with each other. We're coming out of COVID still, and we're still grasping for this interaction of social connection with other people in a sphere of like, how do I do this from my safety of my home? Because it's sometimes really hard to get out and do things. and still have that. Proximity chat. Proximity chat is like when your voice gets louder, when you're closer to someone, and softer when you're further away. My opinion on proximity chat is that proximity chat will hard carry pretty much any game that it's in. I think proximity chat you can put into anything and it just instantly makes it a little bit more fun. And it's because you're stimulating the same things that we had as a kid, right? Like when you're playing hide and seek and you hear someone counting and you're shouting from people when you're tagged, that's how you heard it, right? It's not this digital wall of I see something and I'm far away, but I can still hear them because they're in my Discord call. It's this simulation of the space of these folk games that they've been played in for so many years, where Discord's putting in the like proximity chat with a new update at some point, but it's this idea that you have this simulated space in this simulated world, which is what games are, right? Games are the digital simulation of the world. And simple is just better. I think elegance in design is overlooked still, even though it's super, super important. And with so many games being like, I want to put 75 mechanics into my game and make the next real-time strategy game with a shop of 17,000 things, it's just so much easier for people to understand because we're not diving into games to the length that we had the time before because the world is not in a luxurious place to where we are able to have that time and affordance. So it's easier for people to latch on to things that are quick and simple and that make them have the escapism that game can have. A potential future example, and I didn't clear this with the developers, but this is what I think the future of a digital folk, I don't think this game is particularly friend swap, but a digital folk game could look like, is Pawn Life's Discone. I think that Pawn Life's Discone is aiming for this kind of sphere where you have this digital realm where you can play folk games inside of it. I think it's a good example of what things could come from these things, and my ask of you all as artists, as designers, is to continue to push forward social elements, continue to remember the things that make interaction and social things work for us and as humans, and continue to design great works and make some digital folk games. Thank you.
I gotta clarify, that was not a paid sponsorship. I'm making that game. It's right there, you can play it later, or some other time. I don't know how much time we're gonna have after this. But next up is Salon, who is another person that I was a fan before I met, who also made games with Mario and Luigi in them, and inspired me to do that. And hosted an incredible show at Boshis almost 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago?
2023?
What?
Yeah.
Okay, almost 3 years ago. That was about ambient play, which is what we're going to be talking about. And so hopefully one day we're going to do that again. But give it up for Flan.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to try something with this one, which is where we're going to watch this video. I didn't pre-watch it, so I don't know if there's any interesting stuff that happens in it. We all get to experience it together for the first time. So I'm going to leave that running, and we'll have just enough space for the presentation on the other side. So yeah, this is ambient play in and outside of games, something I've been thinking about for a little while, and it's something that you are already familiar with, actually. So before I get into that, me and my work, I've made a lot of like single-player walking simulators that are more deterministic, but I actually am really, really interested in procedurality in games, especially things where you make really simple systems and they make interesting results. So this GIF you see of the dogs at the bottom, the only rule they have is that they have a vision cone, they look for another dog. If they see another dog, they'll go and have a greet behavior where they go up and like stand in front of them for a few minutes and then they go back to wandering until they see another dog. But it actually just kind of looks like people hanging out at a party, which I think is interesting. So why am I interested in this sort of thing? I grew up as an only child. I had a desktop computer that was not connected to the internet until I was old enough to go on the internet. And downloaded on that computer was this amazing software called After Dark.
Can I only play videos in slideshow mode? Okay. I'm sorry, we're gonna, if anything amazing happens in the YouTube video, we might miss it. So this is one of the many screensavers that you can look at in After Dark. Oh, sorry, I meant to skip the video ahead, not the slides. Just skip it a little ahead a bit so you can see what happens in the screensaver. It's very nice, they're shooting stars. But one thing that's really cool about this is that the experience of the screensaver is not just contained to watching the screensaver. There's also the config menu. And After Dark has this amazing way of designing variables where they only expose to you a few variables, and you get to play with them, and you get to have this interesting experience where you go into the config, you change a couple things, and then you go back into the screensaver and you see how that changes the experience. So for this screensaver, the variables are buildings. Building height is a percentage, interestingly enough, and lightning in frequency. Right now, lightning is set to sometimes. Here's another few great config menus. So the variables are different for every screensaver. So on the left, we have variables for worms. You can change the worm count, you can change segments per worm, and you can change the wiggle degree. And that's perfect. And then for Daredevil Dan, there's only one variable, and it's the insurance risk payout, right now set to $5,000. So let's take a look at what Daredevil Dan is like to play as a screensaver. I should have downloaded these videos so there's no load time. There he is, there's Daredevil Dan. And he's gonna jump one bus. Let's see if he can do it. He did it. Good job, Dan. Now he's gonna jump 2 buses. Can he do it? He couldn't do it this time. But if you keep playing, like the stakes get higher. And you don't know. You just don't know if he's gonna make it or not. There's also Lawn Mowing Man, which I like a lot. You can watch the lawn grow, and it's very beautiful. And then every now and then, and the frequency is probably something you can toggle, he comes in through and he mows it, and then it starts growing immediately behind him. It's so good. So I was just in my room, I was just watching these, and I was just playing around with them. I would even have friends over and we would like do this. But yeah, I also, let's like take a few steps back from the screensaver world. I think something that I realized when I was a bit older is that what I was doing with the screensavers is actually something that we all do, whether or not it's with screensavers. But so for example, if you've ever looked up at the night sky and tried to find shooting stars, or if you played with these things, these awesome marble racers, and like watched marbles race down the track, or if you've made a CPU tournament in a Smash game and you've watched the CPUs duke it out, or if you've done this where you pick a raindrop and you trace its path and you try to see if it beats other raindrops to the bottom. If you watch dogs play at the park, if you watched spectator sports, if you've done divination, and it's actually, all this kind of connects really nicely to Joey's talk, so thank you, Joey. Then you've engaged in ambient play. And I think what's cool about a lot of these things is that you don't have to be told by someone what the rules of the raindrop game are, you just know. Like, it's very obvious, like, what you're looking for in that. And so it's kind of this style of play that it's almost a folk game that we play in our own heads, and it's often a solitary experience. It doesn't have to be, though. And what's cool about it is that it kind of contradicts a lot of the things that we think about play when we talk about what play is. So for all the people that aren't like games academics, which I'm glad to not always be talking to games academics, there's this kind of concept that we call the magic circle. And basically what the magic circle is an agreement to temporarily change what is meaningful to you for the purposes of playing a game. So if we're playing soccer, the goal is meaningful and the ball going inside the goal is very meaningful. That's a score. But if we're just in a field with a goal with a net in it and a ball, those objects themselves aren't inherently meaningful until we start playing soccer. So that's what the magic circle is. It's an agreement that we all make in a little pact together so that we can do something playful. And often when we talk about play, we talk about doing this so that we can make choices inside that system of rules, and we can kind of like have a push and pull either with the rules themselves or with the other players in the game. But actually, I think what's interesting is that we make this pact, we enter this new sphere of meaning, even when there are no other players, and even when we're not making any choices about any actions that we do, and we actually have no influence on what's going to happen. We're still like invested in what's going to happen. Why would we be invested when we have absolutely no control over what's going to happen? How is that still playing? But we know in our heads, when we're in that headspace, it's very playful, and we're kind of having fun, and we're kind of invested in the same way that we are when we're playing a game. And at the very simplest level, a system can do this. Oh, and this reminds me to bring this back. Although this is a video, so actually we have to unbring it back. I'm so sorry. A little bit of forgetfulness there. So this is a clip from The Office that we're just going to kind of poop through. But this is just an example of how, like, even the most simple system in the world, the DVD menu logo bounce, has very few rules, but it's riveting. And it's also something where we don't have to tell each other what the victory state is. We know. Everyone in this room who's not paying attention to Michael Scott is paying attention to the DVD menu logo bounce. They haven't talked to each other about what they're looking for, but they all understand what they're looking for. And there's deep disappointment when it doesn't happen. And there's also, in just a little while, yeah, so that's the deep disappointment. And we'll also get to see some elation when it does happen. And they're so invested in this that they just leave when they win because there wasn't anything else, important going on. All right, just bring that back. So yeah, we make meaningful the results of the system even though we have no influence over the outcomes of the system. And I think this is an interesting form of play because we don't talk about it a lot, but we all have had this experience. And we also don't really design for this experience. But it's also not a new thing. This also connects well to Joey's talk. A lot of games in the past were entirely fate-based, were just like dice rolling, number counting games. This game, Senate, was a game that ancient Egyptians played to figure out how much favor they had with the gods, but over time it also just became a fun luck game and like a gambling game. All right, so why do I call this ambient play? That's kind of a choice, right? So I think ambience is something that exists across a lot of different art forms and a lot of different media. And the way that it can exist across multiple different art forms, because usually you'll get a genre that's like specific. Oh, did something happen? You'll usually have a genre that's specific to an art form, but ambient art transcends the form because it's an engagement style. It has to do with how you pay attention to that thing and how you engage with that thing. So whether it's ambient music or ambient film, it's something that it slips off your brain. Like you can't fully pay attention to it. And in these time-based games like Animal Crossing, kind of like Joey was saying, like time just keeps going, and so you have to enter this different mode of engagement with it. And it's sort of this like anti-flow state. Like you can't control the character, so the way that you pay attention is like fundamentally different. This is a quote from Brian Eno. Because I think one thing that's also cool is that there's like, we think of ambient music and film as being like just set across time and it just goes. But there's actually a lot of connections to game design because he was making procedural music before we had computers by just making contraptions. So he said, I've always preferred making plans to executing them. I've gravitated towards situations and systems that, once set into operation, could create music with little or no intervention on my part. That is to say, I tend towards the role of the planner and the programmer, and then become audience to the results. What does this sound like? Config menu. It also sounds like a lot of other things, but I just wanted to tie it back to that. So he's kind of game developing as a musician, and I think that is a really cool connection to procedural game design and also just procedural systems in general. So what I don't mean by ambience is like just having chill graphics, chill music, and saying like, oh, it's an ambient experience, but like this game is like a 2D platformer. You have to make every minute decision about where the character moves, and the game waits for you. So I don't really think of that as like an ambient engagement style. Why talk about this? It broadens our understanding of what play is fundamentally. We can think about how games and digital art connect to the tradition of ambient art. It complicates our understanding of investment and meaning making, which is what I want to get into next. And by talking about it, we can also help designers understand what this type of play is so that maybe they can design for it. And the real reason I like talking about it is because I want more people to make games that are ambient play because I want to see more of that. So some of the conditions that invite it, if you want to go and design something, is to have the system autonomy be very high. This is what Joey was talking about. Games keep going on their own. They have their own time. They're not waiting for you. Unpredictability should be high. Your influence on things should be low. And optionally, put a config menu and allow the player to be a sort of designer and invite them into that style of play. The most important rule, though, is to make simple rules that yield interesting results. Like the dog example I talked about, we also have Conway's Game of Life, which if you're familiar with it, there's very simple rules that determine when a panel, or when a pixel is on or off based off of the number of on or off pixels around it. And it just refreshes every frame based on those rules. And yet, what is that? That looks lifelike. So we did, as Muchi mentioned, we did a show at Boshis Place in the end of 2023 that showcased ambient play across all different types of experiences. So we have 2 computers running After Dark screensavers. We have a live marble race that people could build the tracks for and then run. And then we also have, this is Ollie and Fran actually, playing the raindrop race, which we set up by setting up a pane of glass and a spray bottle so that you could spray water. So I want to just show you a couple examples of things that have been made in recent years that I think do this really well. There's this game called Brave Mouse Cartographer. We're going to go inspect slideshow mode to look at this real quick. This is a game where you're a mouse riding on the back of an eagle, and you don't have control over your movement. You just get to watch the landscape shifting and changing beneath you. And your job as the player is to be the cartographer and chart out the landscape underneath you. But there's also clouds and weather, and it takes a lot of time to fly over the whole land. So it's something that you kind of play with a group over time, maybe in a gallery setting, and there's like paper all over the floor for you to draw your map on. So I like that one. In the fine art world, there's Ian Cheng, who does a lot of things similar to this, but I think Emissaries is a really great example. It's a piece that just has these digital agents, which are kind of like these like simple AI characters in this world, and it's all completely not deterministic. It's procedural. The characters have certain programming, but the way that they interact with the world and other characters is just happening in real time. Like, this is not a video, it's a simulation that's running 24/7 in the gallery, and you can come up and see it in different states. And there's kind of different chapters that he's built systems in order to kind of transition between different chapters, but I think this is really cool. I would like to see more stuff like this. Here's some good examples of nice blends of ambient systems and interactivity. Nobi Nobi Boy by Keita Takahashi, who's the Katamari developer, has interaction, but it's also just set in this really interesting procedural world backdrop. Animal Crossing, we talked about that. Endless Forest, you're a deer in this endless forest, and there's other AI deer as well as human deer. You won't always know what is what. It has a screensaver mode. Seaman down here is like a Tamagotchi, but it's like weirder. He starts to grow up, and like in his teen years, there's kind of like this tension with you as a parent, and there's like pushback, and I think that's really interesting, like designing an autonomous character that has a relationship with you, the player. David O'Reilly's Mountain, Tomodachi Life, Minecraft, great blends. Something that happened a year ago, I see, yeah, there's some people who know what this is in the crowd. Really good example of what I'm talking about here, because the simplest rules ever, it's essentially a bunch of DVD menu logos bouncing. Let's get that back, actually. It's like a bunch of DVD menus. No, sorry, this is a video. Oh, it plays in, okay. So yeah, we're basically racing DVD menu logos against each other. They have to get to the carrot at the end, and that's what they do. And eventually one of them will get the carrot, and it's really funny to watch them race because they're just bouncing and they hit each other, and it feels competitive. Yeah, Blue won that one. This is a very early one. And people got hyped about this. People were really invested. And it actually, I think, is like on the latest example of a trend that I'm seeing about these kind of communal ambient play experiences, like Blaseball, which is this fictional online baseball league. That had some amounts of player interaction, but I think is really in line with this. Horse Race Test is cool because there's really there's a whole fandom but the fans cannot do anything towards the game. They're just fans. So yeah, there's another video. But so some examples of the horse race test fandom. There's so much art, there's so much community, there's so many mods of this game, and there's just so much like joy around this experience where you have absolutely no, it's a game and you're not playing it, right? But you're getting so much joy out of the playing of being witness to it. Yeah, that's jovial merriment. Yeah, so it's a real tattoo someone got because of a game that they couldn't influence. It's kind of like sports, you know, it's a lot like sports actually. What is this? This is a funny fan edit, I think. Let's just watch like a second of this. If I go over time, just like tell me to wrap it up. This is like a hype beast, jovial merriment fan cam. It's better with the music, but that's okay. It's just like every time he wins, it's just like really often. Yeah, this is like a fan animation of jovial merriment. This is like you don't make this unless you're really invested. Yeah. So that these things bouncing around on screen led to that. Is really, is that there's more. And the narratives arise, like that there's the emergent narrative that comes out of it, and that leads to these like kind of this beautiful collaborative storytelling experience that everyone understands that no one's the owner of describing the lore of what's happening to the bouncing horses, but we're all taking part in it. And that's really cool. So those were great examples. Let's zoom out again and but why should we talk about it? One thing that I've observed a lot in how people have started to talk about games and what's interesting about games is that they talk of them as the art of agency, and that they're all about this beautiful agency and this mastery that you can have over the systems, and you can get really good, and you can make these really interesting choices on these narrative choices or these spatial choices. And by the way, I'm not dunking on this author. I really like him actually. But this is a great example of the thing that I'm talking about that I don't enjoy so much. But you should read his stuff, he's really smart. But yeah, we've basically synonymized game with interactivity, and I don't think that's great. Or synonymizing play with interactivity and choice. And I think this is happening mainly because games have so much to prove to the world, right? They need to prove that they're not just this idle entertainment for violent teenagers, that they're in fact a new form of art. And to kind of when you're put on the spot and you have to say why you're a new form of art, it's like, oh, what's different about this? Oh, well, they're interactive. You can make choices. There's agency. And now we're the art form of agency and we're the art form of choice. But I think we rushed to that conclusion because as we've seen today, you can play without making any choices at all. And you can have this amazing playful experience without having any agency over what happens. So this doesn't line up with how we see the experience of play. And there are other things that I think games are defined by that are not interactivity that also set them apart. One is playfulness just as a whole, like we talked about the temporary meaning making, that sets games apart. Also the liveness of them, that they're happening in real time. Watching a film about a basketball team that wins the finals is fine, but watching the New York Knicks win the finals is amazing because it's happening in real time and it's real. Similarly to, this is not as good as if I just actually had a DVD in there and it was doing this in real time. But it's also kind of good because none of us have seen this particular video before. So there are things about games that are unique about games that we can talk about and we can justify why they're a good art form without always focusing on player agency. And yeah, Go is great, but it's not everything. So we're getting towards the end. I think when we talk about this, it also allows us to have really interesting conversations about luck and skill. And we know what it means to get good at a game, but we don't really know what it means for us internally when we get invested in something that we can't get good at. I think it's a really interesting thing that we do as humans. It's almost spiritual, it almost connects back to the whole, am I favored with the gods thing? Is there this, opening this window to have fate come in and, seeing what fate will say? But when I say to you, like, oh, I really care about this thing that I have no control over, you'd be like, oh, you're like a gambling addict. Like, oh, that's like kind of sad. But it's like, that's just one example of what that is. It's actually, we've seen all these other really joyful and really communal, interesting examples of caring about things that we can't control. So, some examples up there, we have the Ananobi tip-in. For him, that was play, but for us, it's ambient play, because we had no control. So what does it mean that we can put attention to the things that are beyond our control? And what does it mean that we love watching possibility spaces unfold? What does it mean that we love ambiguity and mystery and miracles? I don't know. But I do have like some thoughts about that. I think we live in a world that is full of deeply complex and yet simple and rich systems where simplicity does lead to complexity. Outside of games, remember the talk is about in and outside of games. I think simple rules yield interesting results is actually like kind of a law of the universe a little bit. This book up here is a cool read. It's kind of about how when scientists were starting to try and create digital life, they were actually really surprised about how easy it is to do that, because you can actually just get things that seem lifelike just kind of by making simple rules. And so I think so much of the human experience is about having this curiosity about how these deeply complex systems work, and kind of being audience to these systems and not having a lot of power. And from these really simple sets of rules arise things that look like miracles. There's probably a lot more to that, but I'm not a psychologist, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Next up we have Everest Pipkin, who is an amazing artist who has done so many different things with video games, and I'm always mind blown whenever they do anything. They also have the most beautiful websites, plural. Like whenever you just go to their website and then click, and then every time you're gonna be like, what? This is better than the other one? It's like I learned so much from inspecting their source. And give it up for Everest and talking about holes in video games.
Hello. This is a retrospective of video game holes. The gamers yearn for the mines. We will go through some of those mines, dungeons, wells, caves, etc. Partly, I think one of the reasons that the gamers yearn for the mines is that every hole, as Susan Sontag says jump. So I once spent a whole summer digging holes. I was 17. I was volunteering at a tree planting organization, and we were reforesting a burned hillside that had been completely consumed in a forest fire a year earlier. And the process went like this. We were using a kind of special triangular-shaped and sawtoothed shovel. I would make this vertical and very thin hole, approximately 10 inches deep and 3 inches wide, in the kind of still black and carbonized soil. And I would mound the earth neatly next to the hole for later use, and then the carbonized section of that earth was only about an inch, kind of like right at the surface. And then a different team member would come along and place a seedling tree in the hole. Those trees were only a few inches tall. They only had like 3 or 4 leaves on them. The forest had been pine, but those seedlings were a variety of trees and small plants for successional reforestation. And the person in charge of placing the seedling would select from their variety, which they were kind of carrying this cloth pouch around their waist, and settle the plant to the bottom, sometimes resting it on a little mound of soil in order to stay upright. And then someone else would come by, fill the holes back up, compact the soil kind of slightly around them, and then a final person would water them out of a big jug. And I didn't do any of the rest of this. All I did was dig the holes. So by the time the seedlings had been placed and the soil was refilled and they were watered, I would be hundreds of feet away, like down the hillside, dozens of holes farther along. I got really impressive calluses by the end of this, not much by the way of muscles. On account, I was like never lifting much more than the weight of the shovel itself, which was carbon steel, not very light and not very heavy. I also got really sunburned. But I will not lie to you and say that this was like particularly fun work, but I think about it all the time because it was meditative in its own way. It got way better once I started listening to audiobooks and stopped like having conversations with people across the hillside. It wasn't that fun. It was, however, really satisfying and really material. I really liked the process and immediacy of it, the kind of like shook sound of dropping a shovel into the earth, and then like the sensation of drawing it back out again, of like pockmarking the landscape with my own actions, and that dedication to kind of slowly transforming sterile acres of ground was really fascinating. And by the end, I was like absolutely not in it for the trees or the forest. I was like in it for the digging. Digging in games follows, I would say, the general trend of gamifying the satisfaction of doing things without the menial labor of actually having to do them. Digging belongs in a set of like undesirable jobs that are made frictionless and smooth via seamless tap-based gameplay. It is like many other types of job that has kind of fallen into game spaces in this way. It's foraging without the bugs, it's cooking without the dishes, it's welding without the metal shards, it's digging without calluses. Even so, there is a relationship to digging in the ground, in the soil, and play. Sand pits are very much like the kingdoms of the playground. The beach is like God-given, with all of those possibilities of dwellings and castles and moats, digging holes to the other side of the earth. Like, who among us, age 9, was not at some point handed a trowel and made a whole afternoon of it? It's definitely related to play. Digging as a mechanic is visible and present enough that it has its own entry on the kind of game mechanics wiki page, but it is not so standard that it is in and of itself a genre. So, for example, the 3 kind of picked out examples of digging in games are described as sandboxes, but not that way, or as adventure games, but not like as digging games. In fact, digging in digital space at all is often kind of pointed to by many different types of mechanics that are all skinned under this like tactile physical act of digging a hole, but often materially are different things. You know, you're tapping on the ground, you're putting something in, you're pressing A to dig, you're mining a wall. You know, they're skinned as digging, but they're often different mechanics. This is because digging, both in games and in the real world of real soil, is often to like actually very different ends. So you're digging, but you're doing something in the digging. There are 1,000 ways that this can manifest, but I'm going to try to group kind of like creating holes into the following categories. So one of them is digging for treasure. Insofar as games are a place where you hide secrets, in the earth is a pretty good place to hide them. Treasures can live in the soil, undisturbed, undetected, until you go looking. Many games use digging as a mechanic to expose hidden objects, which may be externally sensed through upgradable items like dowsing rods in Pokemon, or smelling in Yoshi's Island 64, or metal detecting, etc. Sometimes they are hidden only to be interacted with through rote chance. You have to press A on every single tile, and like, oh my god, sometimes there's something there. In Sea of Thieves, you can bury treasure as well as dig it back up. The metal detector is replaced with like a good old-fashioned treasure map, which you can find scattered around the overworld or pick up from other players at outposts. Other games let you turn up patches of soil for a random chance at an object from like a pool of random objects. So this is Stardew Valley, or Mine Time in Portia, or Rune Factory, or really any other kind of social sim type game that also has wild spaces that you can dig in. Often you're digging in them, and then like, you know, 1 in 2,000 digs is a diamond. Sometimes you have limited stamina to dig, so how much soil you can turn over in a given day is really contingent on how far along you've actually progressed in your skill trees, or if you've upgraded your shovel, what you've eaten that day, etc. This is, of course, a piece of micro-gambling and chance. Digging can be addictive. Digging in soil like this feels like the equivalent of a scratch card. It's definitely a scratch card-like mechanic. That said, this exact scenario does exist in the real world. This is not just constrained to video games, despite it feeling very gamey. This is Crater of Diamond State Park in Arkansas, where you can pay $15 as an adult, $7 as a child from ages 6 to 12, or free if you're 5 and under, to pan for raw diamonds in plowed fields. I've done this. I found some agates, but no diamonds. The diamonds are actually pretty hard to find. Digging, like fishing in games, can have a mini-game quality in this way, so sometimes you're actually limited in time for kind of like how long you can dig things up, or how many kind of spots there are to dig in a given day, like Animal Crossing's Wild World's cracked earth markers. You only get 3 or 5 of them, and still the 24-hour cycle resets. Or sometimes they're in a different space entirely, in which you're kind of like, only allowed to dig in a subset of the game. So the underground in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum is a space that's entirely separate from the overworld gameplay. That uses like the stylus of the lower DS screen to dig up treasures and spheres, which are the currency of the underground. It's also the only place in the game where you can have real-time embodied local multiplayer. So it's a place where you have kind of different rules, or in this cave, in the subterranean structure. They gesture at it in the overworld, even though they're not directly connected, because there are a bunch of structures kind of scattered all over the overworld of this Pokemon series that are the cave vents, so you kind of see them as you walk around, and they're explained as being like, oh yeah, it's the air exchange, but there's no like entry through them. This mining minigame, which is the Pokemon one, plays like a Minesweeper. So oftentimes when it becomes extractive, the verb digging in games actually changes to mining, which makes sense. Much like the creator of Diamond State Park, like being a casual hobbyist fantasy miner for a day makes a fun activity out of a dangerous and demanding task, with histories and realities that are more in line with like disposable labor in the past or the present, rather than like children's activity, and yet it kind of gets gamified in this way. And this kind of treasure-seeking minigame style digging often doesn't have permanent or meaningful effects on the world. Soil will re-smooth itself, buried treasures will regenerate, dig spots will move themselves around the map at the onset of a new day. The very mines that you descend into might reorganize themselves every time you enter. But there are some kinds of digging that is not oriented for kind of shifting through temporary soil, but rather for changing the surface of the world in and of itself. So these are games like Super Mario Bros. 2, which actually allows you to manipulate the surface level by digging, trapping enemies, or changing movement. Farming games require you to clear fields and break up stones, tilling the earth before you can plant in it. That remains relatively persistent. Similarly, different tools for digging are like upgradable, are standard in these kinds of games. The shovel that doesn't break, or that digs multiple holes at once, is a part of that progression tree that allows you to engage with the world kind of ever more effortlessly, ever more automatically, as the action of like press A to dig kind of becomes dull. You get to have more power to your press A. Animal Crossing New Horizons and games made in its imprint like Bacopia, which are voxel or cube-based and allow you to sculpt a world kind of piece by piece, and then watch residents, creatures, etc. live on it in their daily patterns and systems, are a really popular kind of fantasy. Not to mention games like Sim Ant, which have existed for a long time. One of the first things I built on my Animal Crossing island was an archaeological dig site, dotted and decorated with fossils and folding barricades and construction lights. It did, however, end up looking an awful lot like a strip mine, more than a dig site. I ended up planting poppies around the upper rim and was like, I'll just let it go wild. I later learned that many people had this idea. This is a very popular thing to put on your New Horizons island. And these games are obviously relying on lessons that are learned from Minecraft, from Terraria, from kind of the crafting game, the sandbox game, the voxel-based building game. They've had so much written about them, I'm not going to actually dwell on them for the duration of this talk, but know that that is, of course, the lineage that's being followed here. Also, pulling from this mechanical pool are the dozens or hundreds of landscape decoration games that allow you to sculpt an island or hill or mountain or castle or dungeon as the primary mode of gameplay. And also just like straight up digging simulation games, you know, the amount of like Excavator Simulator 2001 on Steam are pretty high. That's a genre in and of itself. So all of these games ask and sometimes require you to dig, sculpt, bore, mine, etc. in order to gain resources or even just to find satisfaction in your created place, which might be the whole point of that game. The digging itself in those games is generally not the core method by which you move through the world. This is different than the games I want to put in the final bucket, which are games that dig in order to farther progression and movement. I mentioned that digging in and of itself is not generally considered a genre, but there are games for which digging is the primary mechanic through which you engage with the world and move through it. So these are games in which progression is through the soil, or through barriers, or blockades, or caves, or wells, or other dirt and rock-filled places where you have to actually make space to move your body. And the subset of digging games has been with us as long as there have been video games, certainly. I think partly just because of the affordances of tile-based gameplay. So if you fill a screen with destroyable tiles, drop a character on the top and let them destroy what they touch, well, that ends up looking like digging. So Dig Dug from 1982 created a whole era of copyright digging games, or copycat digging games, from Zigzag to Mr. Do, as well as the spin-off like Mr. Driller series. The visual schema of moving through a vertical cut of soil is still being iterated on in games like Pepper Grinder or Shovel Knight or Downwell. You know, you have games in which people are, you know, the protagonist, the player of the game, is moving through that strata, through that soil. This is a quote from the developers of SteamWorld Dig, I think. Yes, SteamWorld Dig. From the very beginning, we had the idea of keeping the player in a constant risk of getting stuck as the main source of tension in the game. You know, that idea of like the hole and getting out of the hole, and how you manage kind of getting into and out of, back out of the hole is a big part of these games. They go on to say, if you would dig too deep without considering the route back to the surface, you'd have no way to get out of the mine, and more importantly, you'd be unable to sell all those hard-earned minerals you've collected. So the idea is that you had to consider the process of digging as a puzzle. Descent into the earth, finding a path, and digging, drilling, breaking, etc. through it is so omnipresent as a game convention that it's almost invisible at this point. This is adventure. Subterranean games include, of course, all the big hitters like Cave Story, Dwarf Fortress, Kentucky Route Zero, Undertale, Animal Well, Hollow Knight, Spelunky, Moita. Again, adventure, for which this is a map of the various kind of like connected caves. Adventure, which was drawing on the Colossal Cave Adventure, which is drawing on Mammoth Cave systems in Kentucky. It doesn't really look like the real Mammoth Caves, but the movement through those chambers and spaces emulates kind of that underground traversal. The games about descent often have increased complexity and difficulty and alienness the deeper you go. So dungeon crawlers and their ilk are often arranged into these like strata-like levels with deepness corresponding not to historical time in the same way that like geologic strata is, but rather to challenge. So the entrance to the hole here is sometimes a cave or just a hole in the ground, but it's as often as not a well. Wells are really wonderful devices. They get used all the times in games. They're like these little man-made portals to the underworld. In games, wells are all over the place. They also very rarely hold water. So instead they are an entrance or a hideout or a treasure box, or they're swarming with enemies. Enters of the Kingdom, wells on the surface are reflected under the earth. In older Zelda games, Link's experiences in wells might include like cows to milk, which are just down there for some reason, or it's blow to witness, or an Easter egg of a photograph of a surprise Link falling into a well in Link's Awakening DX. Dark Souls wells are lore locations, enemy lairs, shrines, and shortcuts. They're like moody and scary, and you can't see inside of them, and they require a leap of faith. In Dragon Quest VII, an entire casino is down a well in town. It's not surprising, this subterranean fantasy. I too love to dig a big hole and get inside of it. Sometimes in digital spaces and sometimes not. But the bordered space of the subterranean world also does something very useful for the actual design of a game. Insideness with its edges and its boundaries makes progress like perhaps fiddly and backtracking, but it's still directional. You explore a cave, you unlock doors, you make shortcuts, and then you learn the layout and map the space. Each room can be discrete and connect to others, and you can, and people do, set room-based games inside of human architecture or abstracted landscapes, but the cave, the well, the tunnel, the burrow already does much of this work for you. It lets you have this outside space while still being inside. A hole is an open medium inside of a closed one, so even when you expand the hole, you are creating space inside of an enclosure. Like when you dig, it reshapes the topology of the surface to allow you to stand kind of both inside and outside the surface world of the game. Years ago, I prototyped and never finished a mining game where you fall from the heavens into a very large pit and are demanded to excavate asset store objects for a demanding god. I described it as an asset flip fantasy game, noting that asset flips are also called shovelware. So you're kind of cast from the sky, you're asked to dig, you are playing this first-person angel and answering this disembodied voice who asks you to kind of excavate these asset store objects that are buried in the earth. And then once you expose an object, you can pick it up and move it around, and if it fits God's request, you can bring it to the altar where it's then deleted from the world. And as you dig, you construct these caverns and tunnels, building this kind of ant mound-like warren that you have to learn your way through to kind of get back to, oh yeah, that chamber where I stored the thing that wasn't needed at the time, but I think it was a candlestick. Now they want a candlestick, and there are far more objects in the world than you're asked for, so you ended up needing to kind of sort them and hold them in storage. The tunnels becoming like holding rooms, and then the rooms had to become the places where you were living, and then they turned into a bedroom and a dining room and a museum, and eventually their requests kind of stopped and just left you in a burrow of dug tunnels kind of surrounded by things living there, somewhere between a cathedral and the dump. I never finished this game. I might get back to it someday, but in my initial notes for the project, I wrote, do I want this game to be about penance, or do I want it to be a game about love? And digging is an action that has both in it, penance in its repetition, love in its devotion to the labor. It's construction of a world that was different than the one when you picked up the shovel, making holes as a piece of permanence in a landscape that defaults to the impermeable, and then getting to live there. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, so next up we have the final presentation of the night. It's Hajim, who is an amazing game designer and is currently making a very amazing game about mermaid sex. Mer people sex. Hajim one time wrote a zine as a gift for me titled Stop Thinking About Mario, or something like that. I have the only copy of it in my room. I didn't, but something else happened. And I'm going to be the mic stand for you. Oh, it's sound. This is the sound. The HDMI is here.
Are people familiar with the Antigone, the Greek tragedy? Can anyone summarize it?
Sure. I wasn't sure inside.
Oh,
Yeah, can anyone summarize it right now?
Sure. So Antigone is a Greek tragedy where there was there was a civil war basically that tore this Greek royal family apart. Brothers have died, and the current boss man, the king, is like, no one buried these men, which is like a huge travesty in ancient Greek culture. So one of the brother's sisters, Antigone, is like, I'm gonna go like give burial rights to this guy, and they're like, no, how could you? And they basically wall her up alive, and it continues to destroy this family. That's super sparky notes.
Yeah. Nice. So I'm working on an adaptation of Antigone where the characters are playing a video game all the time during the whole play. And this is part of the play. And the context is that I'm King Creon, and I'm talking about the two brothers that Tori was talking about. Hey. Nothing? What about you? Yesterday? Yesterday, I gave Ethiopia a stage for the wall with, pomp and honors. Anyway, today Ethiopia is a saint and a hero in the eyes of all Thebes. Yeah, the whole city turned up to bury him. The school children emptied their saving boxes to buy wreaths for him. Old men, origin, quavering, hypocritical voices glorified the virtues of the great-hearted brother, the devoted son, royal prince. Oh, I made a speech, yeah. Yeah. And every temple priest was every temple priest was there, yeah. And they had an appropriate show of sorrow, solemnity, and their stupid faces. Yeah, and military honors were accorded to the dead hero. Anyway. No, I'm not doing anything. Yeah, what else could I have done, people had taken sides in the Civil War, and both sides couldn't be wrong, that would be too much. I couldn't have made them solve the truth. Joining gangsters was more of a luxury than I could afford. Sorry. Just I hurt my toe. This is the whole point of my story. Eteocles, that virtuous brother, was just as rotten as boshis. Yeah. That great-hearted brother was just as rotten as boshis. Yeah. That virtuous brother was, he also had done his best to procure the assassination of his father. Yeah. The royal prince had also offered to sell out Thebes to the highest bidder. Yeah, it's funny, right? Polyneices lies rotting in the sun, while Eteocles is given a hero's funeral and will be housed in a marble vault. Hey, you I have absolute proof that everything that Polyneices did, Eteocles had plotted to do. They were a pair of scoundrels, yeah, both engaged in saying out Thebes and both engaged in saying out each other. And they died like the cheap gangsters they were, over a division of the spoils. Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah. Yeah, as I told you a moment ago, I had to make a martyr of one of them. Yeah, I sent out the Holocaust for their bodies, and they were found clasped in one another's, one sec. Yeah, it hurts my throat, yeah. I sent out the Holocaust for their bodies, and they were found clasped in one another's arms for the first time in their lives, I imagine. Can you give me just 1 second? Yeah, each one had been spitted on the other's sword, and the cavalry had trampled them down. They were mashed to a pulp. Yeah. Yeah, so I had the prettier of the two carcasses brought in, and I gave it a stage funeral. And I left the other two rounds. Which was which? I don't know. Honestly, I don't even care. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh. Okay, bye. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, give it up one more time for everyone that was here tonight. Thanks so much for coming. We are basically on time, so there's no time to mingle, other than you can stand up right now and fold your chair. And that's a game we're going to play right now. And then we're going to fold our chair and put it where the chair should go, which I don't know where it is. So Amanda right there has her hand up.
You could just put them all in a pile.
On a pile. Put them all in a pile and we're going to do with you. Make a pile of the chairs.